What do you got for 2019, Tyler?
Oh, is it my turn to talk?
Yeah, I talked for a really long time.
You lost me a little bit.
Welcome, nerds, to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. You can check out all of our content at our website, thenerdspodcast.com, including our YouTube channel, which you can find on that website or on YouTube by just searching the Nerds You're Looking For. It's essentially the gaming companion site for the Nerds You're Looking For. You can also check out my gaming journal, which is on our website by just clicking on Pat's Gaming Journal tab on that website, thenerdspodcast.com. You can also check out our letterbox, which is basically just social media for watching movies. We both have accounts. My account is at the Nerds Podcast, and my co-host is at that Tyler Hunt. And you could also find all of the star ratings for every movie we've formally reviewed on this podcast by clicking on the Nerd Reviews tab on our website, thenerdspodcast.com. I am joined, as always, by my aforementioned co-host, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
I feel like absolute fucking shit, man. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, so behind the curtain a little bit, when we first started recording, we always do this on Skype, and as soon as you pulled up and you started talking to me, I was like, oh man, there's either something wrong with his microphone or he feels like garbage, and it was, he feels like garbage.
Yeah, it's disappointing because obviously we didn't release an episode last week because we were both busy with Christmas stuff, so you want like your first episode back from a short break to be great, and I don't feel like I'm going to deliver today. And I'm just going to throw that out there. I feel like shit. It hurts to talk, so I will do my best.
It's an interesting episode because we're going to be doing our Nerd Year's resolutions for this year. So it's going to be more of a laid back episode anyways. We're not going to be doing a formal review like we normally do. So it's kind of if there was an episode to kind of have an illness or whatever, to be kind of a little under the weather, I think this would be the episode to do it, just because it's going to be a little bit more laid back than normal.
Yeah, we'll see.
I know that you went to Evansville, so you came home for for Christmas to Evansville this past week. How was that?
It was about as eventful as Evansville can be.
We kind of talked about this a little bit, I think, last episode, which was a couple of weeks ago. We kind of missed each other. Like, we were both kind of excited leading up to Christmas because, again, we don't really see each other that much other than these Skype sessions every week. But I was going to be in Las Vegas the same time that you were going to be in Evansville, so we kind of missed each other. But my trip was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I got to do the thing that you talked about, The Void, which is the Star Wars VR experience. There's only so many across the country, and one of them is at Disney World, which is where you went did it at your last trip to Disney World. And I got to do it at Vegas because there's a casino called the Venetian in Vegas that has a bunch of shops. It basically has a miniature mall in the casino, which is really cool. And one of the shops is this VR experience called The Void, which they have several VR experiences. I think they have Wreck-It Ralph, they have Ghostbusters, and they of course have Star Wars. And it's super expensive, so we only did the Star Wars one, but it was so much fucking fun, man. I posted this on our social media, and I still stand by it. It's the most fun I've ever had, playing a game, and that's including any video game. It was so much fun, man.
Yeah, it was a blast, so I'm glad that you enjoyed it and I didn't talk it up too much. I think in retrospect for me, the only thing that would have made it better would be if you're actually keeping score somehow, or there are you could actually die or something like that. I mean, because essentially just you're playing through a movie, and no matter what decision you make, you're going to win. So it'd be nice if there were stakes, I guess. But I mean, that's a minor complaint. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't mean to call her out, but I mean I'm not gonna call her out by name, but my brother's girlfriend, like we had dinner the day before we did this. We all had dinner together, my family and extended family and what have you. And she was telling me about it because we were really excited about going and we were trying to make plans on when we were going to go. And part of my family, including my brother and his girlfriend, had already done it before. So they were telling me all about it. And she was like, well, I'm going to give you a hint. Like, don't shoot your gun too early because then it like alerts them. And I was thinking, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen anyways. And that's exactly what happened. Like, it happens no matter what you do. Because of course it does. Like, they're not going to have like alternate endings for this like super intense VR experience. Like, I would like it if it had multiple endings, like if there was like a stealth version of the thing that we did. But I mean, again, it's like this new technology and there's just no way that they're going to be able to have like multiple endings to it. So yes, I do agree that it would have been cool if there could have been a way to do it without getting caught. But yeah, I mean, it's going to happen every time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the amount of money and time and talent that it took to put that together is insane. So I think that it will eventually get there, but it's just not there yet.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, I knew I was going to love it, but like when you get on the little ship and then it takes you over the lava and you can feel it under your feet and like the wind blowing in your face. I almost said hair, but I don't have any hair, so that wouldn't have applied to me. But yeah, it was just really cool. And I did it with my wife and I didn't think she was going to like it that much, but it was, I mean, she loved it and it was a lot of fun just being able to do it with her. I will say that we both, and I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, like there's a part where you have to hit these buttons and it's almost like that game like Simon Says where you're supposed to like follow the buttons like the order that they were pressed or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that I got it right multiple times and he still said, K2 still said that I got it wrong. And so I wonder if you always get it wrong at least a couple of times just to make it kind of fill out the experience, because the experience is maybe 15 to 20 minutes long. So I wonder if you have to get it wrong at least a couple of times. Because at one point I was just like, my wife was just like, hey, just let me do it, because you're doing this terrible. And I'm like, I'm doing it exactly. Like I was a boss at Simon Says. Like I know how to do that. Like it's a thing. It's a mechanic in a lot of video games. So I'm pretty good at it. And so I know I was hitting the buttons right. And they were not giving me the credit for it. I will say that my wife was just watching me hit the buttons and didn't realize that there was people shooting at us. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I think that you're probably right. I think that it tells you fail like twice to kind of drive the suspense a little bit.
Yeah, I did mess one up because my wife wasn't doing a very good job at shooting. And so like in between, I would like try to shoot a couple of stormtroopers and then I missed one of the sequences. So I had to like press the button wrong just to like start it over again because I accidentally wasn't paying attention when it was happening. But all in all, like I could literally sit here and talk about how cool it was for like basically the entire episode because it was a lot of fun. So if you do have an opportunity to go see it or experience it, I would definitely suggest it because it's really fucking cool.
Awesome, man.
All right, so let's kick off this episode. If this is your first episode, we kind of basically just start off by checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So what are you into this week?
So there are a lot of movies that have come out over the last couple of weeks that my wife and I want to see. So we're starting to kind of dig back into that now that we're back home in Cleveland. So last night we went and saw Vice, which is the Adam McKay directed dissection of Dick Cheney. So you mentioned that at least we weren't doing any heavy lifting in this episode. But explaining this movie and kind of reviewing this movie for what I'm into is pretty heavy lifting because if you're familiar with the concept of the movie, it's definitely part biography, part political drama. So ever since I saw the trailer for this movie, I was really looking forward to it. I think Christian Bale is an amazing actor, and in the trailers, he looks exactly like Dick Cheney. So I imagined that this was going to be really good. I also liked The Big Short quite a bit, even though I haven't watched it since it was in theaters. So with all of that being said, for me, the movie did not disappoint. So critically, this movie is pretty split because it definitely has a strong lean in one particular political direction, and it definitely doesn't try to hide that, which is funny because it's actually also the subject of a mid-credits scene in the at the end of the film that's pretty hilarious. So with that being said, please keep in mind all of that if you're expecting a biopic of Dick Cheney when you go to see this movie, because it's definitely not one-sided, and it is influenced politically, but it's definitely got a left lean to it. So that's pretty much why I almost hesitate to call this movie a biopic, even though it technically is, because it's less of a telling of Dick Cheney's life, and it's more of just an explanation of why he's a shitty person. So even though I can see that it is extremely biased, it falls into my political beliefs and into my own bias. So it's easy for me to forgive it and agree with the story of this movie. The film pretty much just follows Cheney and his family throughout his entire political career, and it does a deep dive on his thoughts and beliefs around the government and power. And I'll be honest, I didn't know a ton about Dick Cheney going into this movie, but by the time the credits rolled, I had no doubt in my mind that he was a piece of shit. Now, I know that a comment like that can start an argument, and that I shouldn't believe everything that's portrayed in a movie, and I shouldn't get all of my political beliefs from the media, and then I shouldn't believe everything I see on screen. But like The Big Short, this movie is dealing with facts here, and it's not leaving much up to interpretation. The film is less about building character arcs or developing characters, and it's more about getting a point across, which it does in a very entertaining way. I definitely felt more educated leaving the movie, and for that, I have to give it props. So the performances in this movie also were really amazing. Like Christian Bale, I'm a little biased because of him being Batman and the best Batman, but he, in my opinion, is one of the best actors living. And this movie helps to solidify that. He is spot on. It's uncanny the way that he plays Dick Cheney and the way that he looks in this movie. And Sam Rockwell plays George W. Bush, and of course he's always amazing. Pat and I are both big fans of his. And, honestly, I've never considered myself a big Amy Adams fan, but after her recent string of performances over the last couple of years, including this one, I'd probably need to change my opinion on that, because she's been in a lot of stuff I've loved, like Arrival and Sharp Objects, and now this. And then lastly, there was Steve Carell, who played Rumsfeld, and he was amazing as well. So yeah, the story was great in my opinion. The performances were great. Overall, I'd probably give this a 4 out of 5. I don't know that it's going to make my top 10 favorites, but if I were to do a top 10 best, since we differentiate between the two, it would definitely be top 10 best for me. And the cherry on top of this whole movie-going experience was listening to a disgruntled old conservative argue with a young liberal during the credits of this movie. Because, like I mentioned, there's this mid-credits scene. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but it basically is this redneck from a focus group earlier in this movie saying oh my God, this movie was liberal, and coming to the realization that this was a very left-sided movie. And this guy verbally reacted to that in the audience, and the young guy behind him started arguing with him. So it was definitely the cherry on top of the whole experience for me. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Vice. If you're more conservative or if you lean to the right, don't go see this, because you're not going to agree with what it's selling. But if you are more liberal politically, I think it's a movie that you'll probably enjoy quite a bit.
So I'm actually really glad that you brought this movie up, because you said that you had a really awesome film going experience seeing this movie. If you look at my letterbox, you notice that I've checked into this movie, but I can't really comment because I didn't actually watch it. I actually need to fix my letterbox and take that out, because I actually check into movies right before I'm about to see them. And so we had a little bit of free time while we were in Vegas, and there's an AMC kind of near where we stay at, and we were like, okay, let's go see Vice, because that looks really good. And Christian Bale and Sam Rockwell, all the things that you said. And so we were both pretty excited about going to see this movie. We sat down. I think it was about exactly 5 o'clock when the movie was supposed to start. And there was this stupid Chevy like logo promotion on the screen. And my wife and I both kind of took turns going to the bathroom, and then we came back, and it was about 10 after, and that stupid Chevy logo still on the screen. And so I went and talked to somebody, and they're like, oh, the movie doesn't actually start until 5:15. I was like, nah, I've been able to read for quite some time. It says 5 o'clock. Like, okay, whatever. Like, you work for the movie theater, whatever. But I mean, it clearly says on your website that it's 5 o'clock, but whatever. So 5:15 comes around, stupid Chevy logo still on the screen. And so I go and talk to them, and they're like, oh, well, there's something wrong with the projector, but we're getting it fixed, and it should start shortly. And I'm like, so the 5:15 thing was bullshit, right? Like, you were just making an excuse, right? So I sit back down, and then like 10 minutes later, they come in and like, oh, by the way, there's something wrong with the projector. We're not going to be able to get it fixed. We're going to give you free passes. And so basically we didn't get to see this movie. And that was probably our one shot to see this movie together. My wife and I would probably still will eventually go see it. But yeah, that was kind of our shot to go see it together. We did get 2 free movie passes, which doesn't really matter to us because it was AMC and we both have A-list. We ended up giving it as like an impromptu Christmas gift to my brother's friend, who's kind of part of our family. I didn't know he was going to be at Christmas, so we didn't get him anything. And so that was our impromptu gift to Danny out there, was 2 free AMC movie tickets that we got from not seeing Vice at AMC in Vegas.
Interesting. That kind of sucks, but at least it covered you for that present.
Yeah, for sure. And which was even more funny was that he got us a card. And so I just took that card, scratched out his name, wrote our name, and put the movie tickets in, and that was his gift.
Hey, man, better than nothing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So what I am into a movie as well. It's a Netflix exclusive movie. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Bird Box, which was directed by Suzanne Bayer, something like that. She basically hasn't done anything that I've heard of. Like, she's famous in the movie industry, but she hadn't really done anything that I'd heard of other than The Things That We Lost in the Fire, which is Halle Berry. I can't remember his name. I could see his face, but it doesn't matter. The movie's not that good. I saw it like 10 years ago with a then girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend. So it wasn't a very good movie, so don't see it. But basically this movie, Bird Box, stars Sandra Bullock as Mallory, a reluctant mother of 2 children during the apocalypse in which an unseen force drives most of the population to commit suicide. So I think a lot of people are split on this movie. You talked about Vice splitting a lot of critics, and I think this movie also has been splitting a lot of critics, especially the divide between critics, what critics feel about this movie and what the audience felt about this movie, I think is really, really divided. So I kind of thought of this like Bright last year, which Bright got destroyed by critics, but a lot of people, the users, the regular people, the normies, as I like to call them, really loved Bright. And I actually am one of those people that thought Bright was pretty cool. Like, it wasn't a perfect movie by any means, but I've seen it a couple of times. It was actually pretty entertaining. Unfortunately, I tend to side with the critics on this one. So I was really looking forward to this movie. I know a lot of people are shitting on it because A Quiet Place just came out, and in that movie, you can't make a sound. And this movie, you can't see. Because if you see the thing, then it basically, the premise is it shows you your worst fear in the world, and that basically drives you crazy and makes you go kill yourself. So that's the premise of this movie, and I know a lot of people are shitting on it because they basically say that it's a ripoff of A Quiet Place, but you're listening to this, so I'm assuming you're also a big movie buff, as well as Tyler and I am, so you probably already know that movies take a while to make. So the fact that these came out so close together means that they were being worked on at the same time. So it's not like it actually, somebody saw A Quiet Place and was like, let's do that movie, but instead of making a sound, you can't see. Like, that's not what happened. It just, they had similar ideas and it came out at around the same time. Well, A Quiet Place looks like fucking Citizen Kane compared to this movie as far as I'm concerned. Because, so I've said this before, flash forwards don't work for me. Because in my brain, I can't shut off the fact that if you show me a flash forward and there's only a certain amount of characters in that flash forward, then I'm like, okay, well, now I know that those are the only characters that I should care about, because those are the only characters that are going to quote unquote make it. And basically, the way that this movie is made, so the first thing that you see is you see Sandra Bullock giving this speech to these two kids about how they're going to go on a trip, that it's going to be super dangerous, and that they can't take off their blindfolds. I think you see this speech in the trailer, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but that's the first thing that you see in this movie. And then it flashes back every once in a while to basically how the apocalypse happened. And Sandra Bullock in this movie basically comes across this group of people in this house, and it's basically her group. And as you kind of cut back and forth between the present and the past, you kind of see what happens to this group. And because I've seen this flash forward, and I don't want to spoil too much for anybody that does want to watch this movie, you know that she's going to eventually just be on her own with these two children. And it's just a matter of time, like, what happens with these people. Like, do they run away? Do they get killed? Like, that's the only suspense in this movie for me. And I'm not going to care about these characters, because I know from the first second of this movie that the only three characters that I really need to invest emotionally in are Sandra Bullock and these two kids. And the two kids you don't even see in the flash forwards, like in the cutbacks to the past. So really the only character that you really care about throughout the entire movie is Sandra Bullock, and she's kind of a shitty person. So I just didn't care about any of these characters, and that has to be what I care about in these movies. Like, yes, this is a cool concept, but there just wasn't enough for me because I didn't care about these characters. And honestly, there was at least 2 times where I stopped this movie on Netflix just to see how much longer I had, because it felt like a chore. About an hour into this movie, I was like, when is it going to be over? Because I don't give a shit about what's happening.
That sucks. I was looking forward to this. It honestly wasn't even on my radar. So I obviously saw all of the stuff on Instagram and all of the stuff on social media about this movie, and it's been memed to death at this point. But yeah, I was going to watch it last night and ended up not getting around to it. So now I don't know that I'm going to rush to watch it.
You mentioned a meme. I saw one that I liked quite a lot. It was the Ninja Turtles, like the newest Ninja Turtles, and it was Sandra Bullock, and somebody put like Ninja Turtle eyes on her blindfold. It was pretty fucking hilarious. I like that one quite a lot. But not to spoil too much of this movie, but you kind of see the monster, but not really. Like, there are people in this movie that basically, instead of seeing the monster and committing suicide, they essentially go crazy. So there are people in this movie that have seen this monster, but you never see the monster. But you see like drawings of the monster, and that's it. So basically, it's just like super low budget in that aspect. Like, they don't even bother showing you the thing. And which, I know I kind of talk both sides of my mouth about this, but like I've said in the past, like, if you show a monster too much, it kind of loses its power. But you have to show it at least once or twice in this movie. Like, find a way to show it to me without like Sandra Bullock losing her mind or whatever. And there's a twist at the end that's really fucking stupid as well. So yeah, I know most of you will probably watch this, which, I mean, I'm always for you guys watching it and making up your own mind, not just listening to us. But, I mean, just have your expectations super, super low.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. That's one way to save money, is you just never show the monster. But unfortunately, that's not fun to watch.
No, not at all.
Cool. You ready for comics?
Yeah, what'd you read this week?
I read Hardcore #1. Which is, and after I said that, I looked at you to see if you reacted, because we didn't talk about what comics.
Oh, I wasn't listening to you.
I read Hardcore #1. Did you read Hardcore #1?
No, I did not.
Okay, just making sure. So this is a story that was developed by Robert Kirkman and Andy Diggle. Andy Diggle is credited as the writer, and Alessandro Vitti did the artwork. So this book follows a government program called Hardcore, where soldiers are able to use a machine to take over the body of anyone in the world to take out targets that would normally be really hard to get. So the main character in this book seems to be one of these pilots, and his name is Agent Drake. So given the premise of this book, there has to be some type of exposition to explain the comic book science of all of this, but issue 1 does this in a really fluid way that doesn't distract too much from the story they're trying to build. The book is definitely a page turner, and it's also like a really interesting concept as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with the idea of taking over someone else's body, but this book sticks to the military route of it, and it really pays off by the end of issue 1. It also sets up a really interesting first story arc that is most likely going to be played out over the next few issues. So given the technology that they've created in this universe, a soldier cannot hijack a body for longer than 72 hours without being killed. So in the climax of this issue, Agent Drake is in somebody else's body pretty much, and is pretty much stranded after someone hijacks the hardcore program, and he basically has 72 hours to find out who did it and to stop them before he dies. So I'm pretty interested to see how this plays out over the next few issues. On top of all of that, the art is also really beautiful, so I definitely say that I am recommending this book.
Yeah, as soon as you said that rule, like the 72-hour rule, I was like, yeah, that's going to be the thing. Like, that's going to be the rule that they're going to have to not break. It's hard for me to shut my brain off when it comes to stuff like that, like in movies and stuff like that, when there's a ticking clock. If they show that to you, if they tell you the rule, or if they show you the clock, you know that that's going to be important. So yeah, I'm interested mostly because Robert Kirkman, I think, is really good. I mean, of course, he gets shit because The Walking Dead is so popular, and deservingly so, because that show definitely shit the bed. We've talked about it a million times, so I don't need to get into it again, but his comic work I really enjoy, so I'll definitely have to check that out.
Awesome. What'd you read?
So you're probably going to roll your eyes when I tell you this, but I read Superior Spider-Man #1, which is written by a guy named Christos N. Gage, and the art is Mike Hawthorne, which, if you're not aware, so a long time ago, basically around the same time that we started this podcast, it was kind of the same time that I really started to get back into comics. There was a thing called Superior Spider-Man, which in Amazing Spider-Man 700, Doc Ock dies, and he basically takes over Peter Parker's body, and he becomes Spider-Man, and he exists. His mind exists in Peter Parker's body, and he basically becomes Spider-Man, but he calls himself the Superior Spider-Man because he feels like he has been able to essentially crack the code. He is able to do the things that Peter Parker wasn't able to do, which is balance his personal life, his professional life, and being Spider-Man. And so he comes up with gadgets and stuff like that to make being Spider-Man easier. And of course, it doesn't happen, and he kind of falls within the same pitfalls as Peter Parker used to do, which is the reason why I loved Peter Parker to begin with, because he felt like that vulnerable superhero. But it's not the best book. Like, there was moments where I thought that the idea is crazy. Like, it's definitely the most comic booky idea that you can go with. But I think Dan Slott, who originally wrote the first run of Superior Spider-Man, who also wrote Amazing Spider-Man for a long time, I thought he made it work. There was a few issues, especially Superior Spider-Man #9, which is still to this day the dumbest comic book I've ever read. There's a couple of issues here and there like that get really stupid. But for the most part, I thought it did a pretty good job despite the goofy comic booky idea. Well, I was interested to see how this revamp of that book was going to go. And unfortunately, even though it is kind of an interesting concept, because I know from my past experience reading this book that it can work, I was very intrigued by it, but unfortunately it was kind of more of the same, and I'm not that interested. So essentially, Doc Ock has taken over a new body, and he has moved to San Francisco. Also, his ex-girlfriend also is in San Francisco, so there's a little stalkery vibe there. But yeah, it just didn't work for me because it just, like I said, it felt more of the same. And with comic books, like if I'm reading a character, like I want things to change, obviously, to keep me interested. And I was slightly interested just because I think it's kind of a cool concept. And like I said, I know it can work in the right hands. I just don't know if this writer has the chops to pull it off.
Yeah, I have no comment. That's nice at least. So
you weren't a fan of Superior Spider-Man though, right? Like, did you read it or you just, because of the concept, you immediately checked out?
I read issue 700 and then I read Superior Spider-Man #1 and I was done. It's a dumb concept. So
it is a dumb concept, but like I said, it can be pulled off in the right hands. Unfortunately, I don't think these are the right hands.
In all fairness, Dan Slott's hands were not the right hands either.
Well, I disagree. I think that he did a pretty good job. Like, towards the end of the run, it was very, very interesting to me. Like, I mean, he gets a lot of shit, rightfully so, but I thought that he did a really good job. Like, there's a Spider-Man 2099 cameo at one point, which I thought was really interesting. Like, he does a lot in that book that I thought was really interesting. Like, as much shit as Dan Slott gets, which, again, deservedly so, because he does some weird shit with the character, he obviously loved the character, and that's what I want from my Spider-Man writer.
Cool, you ready for nerd news?
Yeah, what do you got this week?
So, since the last time we spoke, there's been quite a few trailers released, so there are a lot of trailers to talk through. So, the first that was released, I believe right after we released our last episode, was the Hellboy trailer that comes out in April. So, I think that you posted a reaction to it on Facebook, and I can't remember what you said, but for me, I was pretty disappointed. It really didn't do anything. Yeah, it didn't do anything to get me excited for a new Hellboy movie, and I'm not a huge fan of the old Hellboy movies either, so it was just, I mean, yeah, we'll see it, we'll review it on the podcast, but it didn't necessarily get me pumped up for it. I don't know, it just kind of fell flat.
See, I had the opposite reaction. Like, I felt like it was kind of like a James Gunn, Phil Miller, Christopher Lord. Is it Phil Lord, Christopher Miller? I think we always have this. Like, it felt like that type of vibe to me. Like, not taking itself too seriously, kind of batshit crazy, but in the best way, I think is what I posted on Facebook. That's the vibe that I was getting from that trailer, and I could be completely wrong. That could be the only moments of that movie that are like that, but I just felt like it was so tongue-in-cheek, like not taking itself too seriously type of vibe, and that's the movies that I like the most, so I was definitely interested. And I'm like you, I'm not that invested in the characters, so it's one of those franchises that I want it to be good because I want everything that we review or see to be good, but if it's not like I'm going to be sitting there on the edge of my seat hoping that it's going to be, like, needing it to be good like a Spider-Man or a Planet of the Apes movie. I need those to be good because those are the franchises I care the most about, but I'm going to have fun if it's fun, and if it's bad, I'm not going to really care that much.
Perfect. So the next trailer released kind of falls into that same vein for me. So this was not a movie I was super excited about, but I guess I was a little intrigued, and then the trailer looks like garbage. So that trailer is Men in Black International. So did you watch the trailer for this movie?
I did. I feel like we're going to be very similar on this one because I did not care at all. It felt just like cut and paste from the other Men in Black movies. Like, it wasn't that fun for me at all.
I thought the whole point of them doing this would be for them to relaunch it in a way. But you're right. It's like it looks like a sequel to those other Men in Black movies, just with new characters.
Exactly. And it just, where I thought Hellboy was fun and didn't take itself too seriously, I think the opposite of Men in Black International.
Oh, yeah. I thought that it would be a riff in a way, because Chris Hemsworth has some comedy chops, but the few jokes that they put in that trailer were not funny, and 100% what you said. It looks like it takes itself way too seriously.
I will say, and I think I posted this on our Facebook as well, like the chemistry between those two leads worked so well in Thor Ragnarok that I want to give them credit. Like, I want to, like, I don't know. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because they work so well in that movie, but I just didn't feel it in that trailer. And it's only like a 2-minute trailer, so who knows? Like, their chemistry could be just as good in this movie as it was in Thor, but just I didn't feel it in that trailer, and that's all we have to judge it by so far.
Yeah, I would give this movie the benefit of the doubt if it was directed by Taika Waititi, but it's not.
For sure.
So I'm not. Let's see. The other trailer and the last trailer I'll bring up is the trailer for Us that was released on Christmas Day. I think I posted this one to Facebook. It's the new horror thriller from Jordan Peele that comes out in March.
I didn't actually watch it.
Really? It looks fucking dope.
Of course I did.
It looks fucking dope. I saw it was actually on the Vice. It was on Vice last night, so I got to see it a second time as well. But it looks really great.
Yeah, man, this looks so fucking cool. Like, there's no way that the director and writer of Get Out wasn't gonna do another great horror movie, but man, this looks so fucking cool. And because Get Out was so weird in the best way, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt forever, basically, that he can make like this weird concept work. Because it's definitely a super weird concept, but in the same time, I'm super intrigued because I just know that he's gonna make it work.
Yeah, 100%. So I picked up on some nuances in the trailer that I didn't pick up the first time whenever I saw it last night on the big screen, but I just don't see how this movie is not good. Like, the cast is amazing. It looks creepy as fuck. I think that it's going to be a home run.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Cool. So 2 other quick stories, really quick, that aren't trailer related. So this one I just thought was interesting, and I wanted to get your opinion on which movie you were more anticipated, or you were anticipating more for 2019. So I guess Fandango did a poll, and Avengers Endgame is the most anticipated movie of 2019, beating out Star Wars Episode 9. So I wanted to know, in your opinion, which movie are you more excited for?
I mean, that's tough because both are obviously built on these franchises that I love. I would say probably because of the way the Infinity War ended, I would probably say I would give the slightest of edges to Endgame just because we need to know what's happening to all these characters that we love. Not that The Last Jedi ended on a cheery note by any means, but man, that's so hard because JJ's coming back for it, and man, but like I said, I think I would give the slightest edge to Endgame just because we have to know the we have to know the end game because of the way the Infinity War ended. I just think that that's definitely going to be the most anticipated movie of this year, but slightly ahead of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head's at too, and I think part of it might be because the more I've reflected on The Last Jedi, the more I don't dislike it, but the more I kind of see what the people who dislike it didn't like about it. So with that movie kind of being average and in Infinity War obviously ending on that cliffhanger, I can see it, and that I definitely agree, but I also can't turn my back on Star Wars. Like, it's going to be Star Wars for me for forever. So if I were to be able to watch either of those movies tomorrow, I would watch Episode 9. So I guess for me, it's Episode 9.
I still think if I could watch either one of those movies tomorrow, it would be Endgame just because I want to know what happens.
For sure. And then the last story I have, it's super quick, but I just thought it was pretty funny. So if you have been following Rotten Tomatoes, you know that Holmes and Watson opened to a 0% score, and I think they've worked their way up to a 9%. But a story came out that apparently the studio tried to sell it to Netflix, and Netflix turned them down because of how bad the movie was. And this is the same Netflix that put out The Cloverfield Paradox and Mowgli, and from what it sounds like from your standpoint, Bird Box, and they turned down Holmes and Watson. So I can't imagine how bad that movie is that they wouldn't take it.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because when my wife and I got A-List a while back, and then I kind of convinced her to get A-list as well. And kind of the way that I convinced her was because she was like, well, I'm sure that our listeners can tell, like, I tend to monopolize the conversation. And so when it comes to like seeing movies, like what movies we're going to see, it's usually the movie that I want to see. And so when I convinced my wife to get A-list, she was like, well, you have to at least go see a movie that I want to see every once in a while, which is why I went and saw A Star is Born, and I think I saw another movie that I didn't particularly want to see. And Holmes and Watson was another one that she kind of wanted to see. And I was like, I mean, I'll go see it because I kind of agreed to this, but I was like, it looks really bad. And I want to warn you, like, it's getting terrible reviews. And she's like, well, how bad? And I was like, and it was still a 0%. I think it only had like 22 reviews at the time, but I was like, man, it's a 0%. She's like, well, if it's that bad, we don't have to go see it. And I was like, thank God, because I really didn't want to see that movie, because I am actually a pretty big fan of the character, and I really like the Robert Downey Jr. movies. So I really just didn't want to see Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly just fuck it all up. So yeah, not that I needed more evidence that it was a bad movie, but the fact that Netflix refused to buy it, which, I mean, they're so desperate for their own movies, their big blockbuster type of movies. For them to not buy a Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly movie means that it has to be just like the fucking worst.
Oh, for sure. It's got to be awful.
Yeah, you would think that just because of their star power, they would buy it just right off the bat. But yeah, it's got to be pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure. That's all I got for Nerd News.
All right, so like I said earlier in the episode, this is kind of a laid-back episode. We normally would review whatever big movie that came out, but towards the end of the year, we always do these special episodes. And the first one that we're going to do is our Nerd Year's resolution. So if you're new to the podcast, everyone makes New Year's resolutions, and of course we are the nerds you're looking for, so we're going to make what we call Nerd Year's resolutions. We're not super clever when it comes to titles, as you nerds know, so we just kind of changed a word to nerd, and then we kind of go with it. So what we're going to do in this particular segment is we're going to go through our past Nerd Year's resolutions from last year, kind of talk about how we did, which is usually not very good, which for me, I actually think that I did all right, depending on how you look at it. But then after we're done with that, we're going to make Nerd Year's resolutions for 2019, which is always really fun. So first of all, Tyler, how'd you feel you did in this past year?
I was garbage in this past year. Absolute fucking garbage. And last year I did really bad as well, but I had an excuse because I got a new job and I moved cities and was working out of a hotel and all that stuff. This year I do not have much of an excuse. I just did shitty.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we're at too. Like, I honestly, when I make these Nerd Year's resolutions, like, I want to be super lofty. Like, I want them to be hard. Like, if they're going to be easy, then why even make them? And I always kind of go back to the excuse, like, everyone makes New Year's resolutions and very few people actually stick with them. So when we make these, we know that generally we're not going to hit every single one of them. But I, like you, didn't have the best year either. But I'm going to kind of give myself a win on a couple of them, and maybe you won't agree with me that I won, or our listeners won't agree with me that I won, but I'm going to give myself the win on a few of these. But so let's just go through our Nerd Year's resolutions for 2018 and talk about them in particular.
Sure. So I believe that we split it up last year, or at least I did, into like a couple different categories. So for my TV category, I wanted to watch Black Mirror, and I wanted to watch Roseanne because I was excited for the reboot in March. Little did I know all of the shit that show would end up going through this year. So out of those two things, I watched Roseanne. I finished Roseanne. I did not watch a single episode of Black Mirror, even though I still really want to.
So do you want me to do my TV too? Because I broke mine up into like movies, TV, comic books, and video games as well. So do you want to go ahead and...
I can go through everything real quick, and then you can go through everything if you want.
Okay, that's cool. That's fine. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, so movie-wise, my goal was to watch 60 or more movies in theaters. And I'm pretty pissed because I got 57 counting last night. And today my wife and I are going to go see a movie, so it's going to be 58. So unless we see like 2 movies tomorrow, which is New Year's Eve, I'm not going to make it by like 1 or 2. So that's super disappointing. So I'll get close, but I won't get there. And I also wanted to watch all of the Harry Potter movies this year, which I got through.
Let me guess, you did not watch that.
No, I got through the first one. I don't know, man. I can't fucking do it. I just can't fucking do it. So I did not get through my Harry Potter goal either. I also had 3 things that I wanted to read this year. So I wanted to read Ready Player One, I wanted to read The Watchmen, and I wanted to read V for Vendetta. So I read the Ready Player One. I did not read Watchmen or V for Vendetta. So 1 out of 3 there. I wanted to explore more board games, which I'm giving to myself because I've had multiple game nights this year in which we've played different board games. I've added more board games to my collection, so I'm going to count that one as a win. And then I wanted to get back into video games. So I set what I thought was a pretty easy goal for myself, which was to beat 9 games this year. And I did not even get close. So that did not happen. I just didn't get back into video games like I thought I would be able to. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to a time thing. So I'm going to touch on a few of these again in my 2019 resolutions, because I think a couple of them are achievable, but for the most part, it was a shitty year.
Yeah, so I think I did a little bit better than you, again, if you give me the couple of wins that I'm giving myself. So I did it a little bit different order, but I mean, I broke mine down pretty similar to you. So my movies is gonna kind of be the same each year now, because I think 150 is kind of a good number for me. So I wanted to see 150 movies, whether they were for the first time or if they were repeat viewings or whatever. I just wanted to see 150 total. And so I have my letterbox up right now, and so I have 166 right now, but of course I have to take Vice off, so it would be 165. So I did hit that. A lot of that has to do with A-list, so I was seeing a couple of movies a week with just A-list. So yeah, I definitely hit that pretty easily. I have 152 theater viewings was my goal, because I wanted to see at least one a week, which there's 52 weeks in a year, so I literally hit 52. Currently, I have 53 on my letterbox, but again, I have to take Vice off. I just haven't done that yet, so I did just barely make that, but also that's a lot to do with A-list. Like I said, I was seeing a couple a week. If I didn't get A-list, there's no way that I would have hit that mark, so I'm pretty grateful for A-list. Letterboxd, I did make a couple of Letterboxd NYRs resolution, which of course you can follow me at the Nerds Podcast. I wanted to write a short review for every movie that I'd never seen before, whether it came out in the 30s or whatever. As long as I hadn't seen it, I wanted to write a short review, a couple of sentences each for each movie that I'd never seen before, and I also wanted to give star ratings for every movie, regardless if I'd seen it before or not. And I pretty much did that until about mid-October. Once Shocktober hit full swing, I kind of fell away from that. But if you check out my letterbox at the Nerds Podcast, you'll see that I did write short reviews until basically mid-October. So yeah, I didn't quite get that, but I feel like, again, kind of what you were talking about with your excuse moving and stuff last year, I also changed jobs and stuff like that. So, yeah, right around Shocktober is when that happened. So it was kind of busy for me. So, yeah, I didn't quite get that one, but I'm kind of giving myself the win on that one because I did it for majority of the year. I also wanted to watch a majority of the 150 movies that I watch. I wanted them to be first-time viewings, and out of the 165 that I watched, 99 of them were for the first time. So obviously I did hit that mark as well. So I'm pretty excited about that. As far as TV is concerned, I wanted to watch Lost, which I had watched the first couple of episodes of season 1 when it first was released back in, I guess, the 90s, early 2000s, whenever it was. And I just couldn't stay with it. And my wife and I were both really excited about this one. She kind of usually does the TV ones with me. So we were both pretty excited about Lost. And so we sat down. I think it was like within the first couple of weeks of 2018, we knocked out the first 2.5 seasons. Like, I think we got through about halfway through season 3. And then we both were just like, this isn't that interesting to us. So it kind of fell away. And I was kind of telling myself all year that eventually I was going to pick it back up and just kind of watch it by myself, but I never did. So yes, I didn't actually watch the whole season or all the whole series, but it never interests me that much. Like, the first couple of seasons are really good and I really enjoyed them, but like I said, it felt like homework towards the 3rd season, and so I just kind of fell away from it. And I mean, I'm not going to continue watching something just because it's a Nerd Year's resolution if I'm not liking it. So that's kind of why I fell away from it. And then kind of one of the funner ones that I was kind of looking forward to that I didn't really do all that much is I had gotten this loot crate right before we did our Nerd Year's resolutions episode last year. And one of the things that came in the loot crate was these cards that I think there was like 10 or 15 of them, and they were recipes for burgers from Bob's Burgers. And I know that when we did that episode, you mentioned that there's a whole book dedicated to this very thing. It's like a cookbook essentially for all of the burgers in Bob's Burgers, and I was really excited. I'm glad I didn't do the Pat thing that I always do, which is get really excited and go out and like get all of the things for this resolution or whatever I wanted to do, because I really considered buying that book and just doing all of them, and I'm really glad that I didn't do that because we did a few of the burgers. Like, my wife's a very good cook, and so she made a couple of them, and honestly, some of them are just like plain like bacon burgers, and some of them are like super weird. Like, there was one that she made that was like gravy and like Ritz crackers that you would like crumple up and like sprinkle on the burger, and it was all right, but I really just wanted a regular burger. Like, I guess I'm just not that adventurous when it comes to my burgers. So we did a few of them, but we didn't really stick with it because there was some of them that was super fucking weird. Like, there's one that was like a blue cheese on it, and I refused to eat blue cheese. So that one was never going to happen. So I guess I'm just not that adventurous when it comes to my burgers. So we only did a couple of those. Comics, I wanted to read Y the Last Man, which is a layover from the year previous. So this has been a Nerd Year's resolution for 2 years straight. There are 10 volumes. I had read volume 1 previously, and I have gotten to volume 5, and I just put it down. I was just like, I'm really not that interested in it, so I normally, if I don't do one, I just kind of put it on for next year. I'm not going to put this on for 3 years straight. Like, if I'm not gonna read this in 2 years, I'm never gonna read this. So I got to volume 5 and I was pretty much done with it. So I'm calling it quits on Y the Last Man. Maybe I'll watch the TV show. I think they're making a TV show, or maybe even making a movie. Maybe I'll watch it, but I really couldn't get into it. And then I wanted to get caught up on Amazing Spider-Man. I've read a few issues, but I'm nowhere near caught up. So that was definitely a loss for me. And then video games, this was the kind of the big one for me. Gaming has become a huge part of my life the last couple of years. I mean, it was always a part of my life, but the last couple of years, it's been just a huge part of my life. And so I wanted to beat 20 games. And Tyler talked about how he wanted to beat 9, and he didn't really come close to that. I really didn't come close to 20 either. I ended up beating 14 games. So, I mean, I guess kind of close, but not really. I got more than halfway to that goal. So 20 was probably a little high for me. Like I said earlier, I want to make these Nerd Year's resolutions pretty lofty because I want it to be hard for me to hit them. But yeah, maybe 20 was a little too much. But I will say, and this is going to be kind of, I don't know if I'm going to make this an official Nerd Year's resolution for next year, but I do this thing, and it's kind of a personal thing that I want to try to start to getting away from. And this is not just video games in general, but I generally kind of get distracted easily with like the new thing. And this is really apparent when it comes to video games. Like, I'll start playing a game, and then the new game will come out. There's so many AAA titles that come out week after week that I just kind of get lost in the new thing that comes out. And so like Kingdom Come Deliverance. Like I played that I probably put a good 40, 50 hours into that game, and then something else came out, and I started playing that, and then I kind of got lost in whatever it was that came out, probably Far Cry 5 or something like that came out, and I kind of got lost in that game, and then I never came back to Kingdom Come. So there's quite a few games that I started, pretty much beat. Like I beat like 60-75% of it, and then just never went back to it and completed it. So I could probably have hit 20 easily if I had just beaten those games as well, but I didn't. So I only got to 14. So that's definitely something that I want to work on. It's just like sitting down and beating a game and not getting distracted by other games. So it'll definitely save me a lot of money too, because I won't be buying as many games. So that's definitely something that I want to do. I also wanted to write a review for every game that I did beat. That's my gaming journal that you can find on our website, thenerdspodcast.com. I think I only wrote about 6 or 7 of those reviews. So obviously I have a lot of writing to do in the next few weeks, but I do plan on getting those caught up. So look forward to those. And as far as the YouTube channel is concerned, I did make a goal of 200 subs by the end of the year, which I did not hit, and I will not hit in the next couple of days. It'd be pretty crazy if we hit that in the next couple of days, because I think last time I checked we were at like 135. But these last couple of months, like I said, have been really busy for me, and I haven't been streaming as much. So if I had stayed consistent, I was probably on pace to break that. But the last couple of months, I basically streamed very sporadically. So I'm going to start that back up. I actually made a new schedule, and I think I can actually keep up with that schedule. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So those were my Nerd Year's resolution for 2018. What do you got for 2019, Tyler?
Oh, is it my turn to talk?
Yeah, I talked for a really long time.
You lost me a little bit. So I kind of tried to stay concise. I don't have a ton for 2019 because whenever I set a bunch, I end up having a year in review like I just had, which is not great. So I think that these are all things that I legitimately want to do, and that means that I legitimately can do them. So it's not like, I feel like I'm stretching a little bit, but kind of like what you were saying, to make it not just something that's super easy, but I also want it to be stuff that I legitimately want to do. So, you know, Harry Potter's not on here again because that was just something I was trying to force myself to do. So from a movie standpoint, pretty straightforward, very similar to 2018. I just want to see 60 or more movies in theaters. So I was very close this year. I think next year, if I just keep that in mind, I'll be able to get there. So I definitely want to hit that. From a comic standpoint, I am doing one carryover. So I really, really, really want to read The Watchmen. And I don't know why I didn't in 2018, but I feel like I'm not a real comics fan until I've read that, because it's widely considered to be one of the best comics of all time, and I have not read it. So that is on my list as well. Also, from a comic standpoint, is between last Christmas and this Christmas, I got all 3 volumes of Batman Nightfall, which are pretty fucking thick. I don't know if you've ever seen them. So I want to read all 3 volumes this year because I've not read that, and it's a pretty cool Batman arc, and I'm familiar with the story and know that it is interesting, and it's a really good Batman story. So that's going to be tough because, like I said, it's a lot of issues, but I do want to read all 3 of those. From a video game standpoint, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So I think the last couple years, you and I have typically said something about we got to get caught up on our comic books. So for me, I've got to get caught up on my video games. I got some PlayStation 4 games for Christmas, and
what'd you get?
I got God of War, The Last of Us, Kingdom Hearts Remixed. So those are all games that I want to play, and I want to play.
Start with The Last of Us. It will change your life. It is fucking phenomenal.
I kind of want to start with Kingdom Hearts because Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out, I think, at the end of January. But yeah, I don't know. I might bust out The Last of Us. But either way, I need to get caught up. So I want to play those PlayStation 4 games I got. And then I still have a few Xbox games that I haven't played nearly enough, including Red Dead Redemption 2. So I'm at the point where I have this library of games that I'm super interested in, and I just gotta carve time out of my schedule to play them. So, there's not a lot of TV, not a lot of movies this year for me because, whenever I'm relaxing at night, it's typically my wife and I watch TV or we watch a movie. And this year, I really want to try to make that more of a video game thing. So, I definitely want to get caught up there. The other side of the video game thing, and this is super hypocritical of me after I just said I wasn't caught up, but I really, really want to get a fucking Nintendo Switch and play Super Smash Brothers. Man. So I played Super Smash Brothers last week while I was home with one of my buddies that has a Switch, and I mean it was nostalgia heaven. And there's other games for the Switch that I think my wife would genuinely like to play. So I think it's something that we can bond over. And then also I have a trip to Italy in May for my sister-in-law's wedding, and it would be really nice to have the Switch to play on the plane. So I do want to get a Switch this year as well. From a TV standpoint, I mentioned there wasn't a ton on here. So the only thing I have from a TV standpoint is I've got to watch Black Mirror, and that's another holdover. They just released that Build Your Own Adventure movie or whatever yesterday or the day before. So I mean, everybody's talking about that. Everybody loves that show. I've only seen one episode of it, and there's no reason for me to have not watched it because it's something that's right up my alley. So I definitely need to finish that in 2019. From a board game standpoint, I also kept it pretty easy. So last year, like I said, I wanted to explore more board games. The one that I really have taken to and that I've talked about on the podcast is Gloomhaven. So I want to be sure to continue Gloomhaven through 2019 with my buddies that we play twice a week. It's just a really fun game. It's very detailed, very long. So I have no doubts that we'll be able to keep up with it throughout the whole year, which is what I plan to do. And lastly, I would like to, and this is pretty much 100% based off of your story from a couple weeks ago, but I'd like to go to an additional Comic-Con. So you went to the Louisville SuperCon, I believe, and had a blast. And, I live near a bigger city now, and I know that there are other cons that happen in Cleveland in addition to Indie PopCon that we go to every year. And I'd really like to go to an additional one up here sometime. So whether that's Wizard World or something else that Cleveland has to offer, I'd like to venture out to that at some point in 2019.
Me and Jeff are going to Horror Hound in Cincinnati, which if I was a better friend, I probably should have invited you already. But yeah, man, definitely. We've already gotten our tickets. You should hang out with us.
When is it?
It's in March. I don't know the exact dates, but Jeff and I have already gotten our tickets. So, I mean, obviously, Jeff and I will ride up together, and then you could meet us there. So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how far Cincinnati is from Cleveland, but it's definitely not as far of a drive as we have to make.
Yeah, I think it's I always think of it as the halfway point between Evansville and Cleveland. So it actually would work out pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. I know Pippin from Lord of the Rings, which I know you're not a huge fan of. He's going to be there, but Christopher Lloyd is going to be there. Meatloaf is going to be there. There's quite a few people that I want to get stuff signed, so I'm really looking forward to that. And like I said, if I was a better friend, we probably should have been having this conversation 2 weeks ago when I got the tickets.
No, I might take you up on that. Let me just look it up.
For sure.
Look up the guest. I mean, but Christopher Lloyd at the very least is a big one. I mean, he's getting up there, so that'd be a good one.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead with my 2019 Nerd Year's resolutions. So movies are going to pretty much stay where they're at. 150 movies, majority first-time viewings. I did have it set as 52 theater viewings, but as you were talking, I was like, 60 is not that bad. And I have a list. I'm going to be watching 2 or 3 a week, especially considering one of the Nerd Year's resolutions that I'm going to have here in a second. So I thought 60 wasn't that bad. So I decided to bump it up as I was listening to you. So 60 is going to be my theater viewings this year. And then, of course, the Letterboxd ratings and reviews for the movies that I've never seen before. So a new one that I came up with earlier this morning is I always like the feeling of looking at AMC and not being able to go see a movie because I've seen all the movies that are in AMC right now. So I made, and I don't know how I'm going to even be able to track this, but hopefully obviously I'll just pay attention and just give myself a check mark or whatever when this happens. But I want there to be at least 3 times in the upcoming year that I look at AMC's showtimes and I can't see a movie because I've seen all the movies. So I want there to be at least 3 times where that happens throughout 2019. So I thought that was kind of a fun one. I also want to rewatch all the Lord of the Rings films, which is for me not that hard of a Nerd Year's resolution because I love those movies and I usually do that throughout the year anyways. But what I wanted to add to that is not only do I want to watch the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies, but there's also a Hobbit animated musical movie that was like made for TV that I've never seen before. And there was also a Lord of the Rings animated. I don't think that one's a musical, but I've never seen either one of those animated movies, and so I want to add those as well. So I'm going to rewatch all the Peter Jackson movies, but I'm also going to watch the animated The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings that I've never seen before as well. And a new thing that I want to start doing, what I'll do is Friday after work, like I'll look at AMC A-List and I will see a movie that shows at like 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock. Like basically as soon as I get off work at 3:30, I can go to AMC and sit down and the movie's starting. Like that's generally how I do my movie viewings on Friday, is I just go see anything that basically is showing around that time. And I'm going to start doing something that I tried to do a couple of years ago that I just never kept with. But since I'm planning on seeing movies basically every Friday, the movie that we aren't going to be reviewing for the podcast that week, I want to go see a movie on Friday and do a Facebook Live review of that movie, whatever movie it is. So it's not always going to be the best movie because it's going to be whatever movie we're not reviewing for the podcast, obviously, because I'm not going to step on the podcast toes as far as that's concerned. But I do want to start doing more of those Facebook Live movie reviews for whatever movie that I'm seeing that Friday. So there's my movie Nerd Year's resolution. Moving on to the TV. My wife and I are finally going to sit down and actually watch Firefly. We have seen the first episode of Firefly like 3 times, and then we just never make it past that because the first episode's basically a movie. It's like an hour and 45 minutes long or something like that, and so we just never make it past that first episode. But it's only 1 season and a movie, so I'm pretty sure that that's going to be a pretty easy one if we could just make it past that first episode. So that's my TV, my sole TV one. And then comics, obviously I'm dropping Y the Last Man. Like I said in my recap of 2018, if I can't do it in 2 years, I'm just never going to do it. I mean, at the pace that I'm going, it would literally take me another 3 years to read Y the Last Man, so I'm just not going to do it. And then, of course, I'm just going to leave the hangover from last year of getting caught on Amazing Spider-Man. I feel weird adding another one if I can't get that one done in a year as well. So I'm just going to do the Amazing Spider-Man, and hopefully I can get that caught up. As far as the video games is concerned, I'm not going to make, like, I want to beat 20 games this year. What I'm going to do is, because I want to stay consistent with the YouTube channel and streaming, because I really do enjoy streaming quite a lot, is I want to set a goal of streaming at least 400 hours of content throughout the year, which sounds like a lot, but if you actually do the math, if I stream like I want to stream, which is about 3 or 4 times a week, you really only have to do that a couple hours each session, and you're going to hit 400. So I feel like, yes, it is a lot of time streaming throughout the year, but it's pretty attainable goal. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But I also want to post at least 40 videos of edited content. So basically what I used to do before I started getting into streaming is I would basically just post Let's Play edited content. And so instead of doing that, since I'm doing most of my gameplay via streaming now, I started doing kind of what we do with Nerd News, is where Tyler will talk about a story and I'll kind of give my reaction. Well, instead of Tyler doing it, I'm just going to basically post a video a week of nerd news or maybe a video game review or whatever. So I want to do 40 of those types of videos throughout the year. So basically, essentially, one a week, every other week, essentially. It's going to basically get me there. So, and then the last video game one, and this is the only one, I wanted to put one in there that was like, hey, I want to beat this game. And I've talked about this game a couple of times. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's Donkey Kong Country. So my sister and I would always sit down like once a weekend and play Donkey Kong Country. Like we would play Tenacious D in the background and play Donkey Kong Country. But I'm kind of embarrassed because I don't think I've ever beaten this game. I actually know I've never actually beaten it. I've gotten to the last like little area and I could never beat the ice levels. And I actually played this while I was in Vegas this past for Christmas, this past visit, because my sister actually got it. I think it was from her boyfriend, got her, because she has a Super Nintendo, and she actually got a copy of Donkey Kong Country. So one night after dinner, we went over to her house and played it for a couple hours, and it was just a lot of fun. We reminisced, and it was definitely a really cool time to just hang out and with my sister and play Donkey Kong Country. And I kept remembering, I've never actually beaten this game. So I definitely want to sit down and throughout 2019 and finally beat this game, because now that I'm a grown-up, I could probably beat the ice levels, I would hope. So I definitely want to beat that game at some point this year.
No, those are all awesome. I definitely like the Donkey Kong one as well. I think that's pretty cool because if I remember correctly, I played the shit out of those games when I was a kid too, and I'm pretty sure I never beat them either. Like I would always get to the last world or whatever, and I could never beat it.
Yeah, I just remember only getting to like the ice levels like maybe twice. Like we would play this, I think, honestly, and maybe this nostalgia is blinding me a little bit, but I want to say like if you take out all of the time that I put into the Madden games, this is probably the single most time I've ever put into one particular game is Donkey Kong Country, because like every once in a while we just basically spend a Saturday and just start from scratch and play it from scratch. I've played Stop and Go Station like a million times because my sister could never beat it, and so I would have to beat it for her to move on. And literally to this day she still can't beat it. When I was in Vegas a couple of days ago, I had to beat it for her because she still can't beat it.
So do you have a Super Nintendo, or are you going to get one of the SNES classics?
See, that's what I'm debating, because I've always kind of made fun of those things because I don't think that they're worth it, because you can just get a RetroPie and have like access to all of these games. But I don't know. I might just for the nostalgia's sake, might just get a Super Nintendo Classic just so I can have it like a Super Nintendo sitting in front of me while I'm playing it instead of playing it on a RetroPie. Or I might just actually go hardcore and just buy a Super Nintendo and get a Donkey Kong Country cartridge as well. I might go that route. So I haven't quite decided, but I guess I have a whole year to do it.
Yeah, nice, man.
All right, so that's it for our Nerd Year's resolutions for 2019. Our last segment, as always, is a nerd favorite. It is my week to choose a topic. If this is your first episode, basically this segment, just to kind of cap off each episode, the topic changes from episode to episode. We take turns picking it, and like I said, it's my turn to pick it. We basically ask what your favorite blank is, whatever that topic is for this episode. I decided to kind of do it a little bit different this particular episode. I was trying to think a little bit outside the box, and so I did basically a tiny research project, which I basically looked at all of the Golden Globe nominees for Best Picture. Now, of course, Golden Globes does it a little bit different than the Oscars. They break it down into drama and then musical or comedy. So there are different movies that are nominated for the Golden Globes that won't be nominated for Best Picture for the Oscars. But I was looking and I noticed that for at least the last 5 years, and this is just kind of where I stopped looking. I'm sure it goes further back than that. I just kind of got lazy with my research project. But basically, for the last 5 years, the movie that has won Best Picture for the Oscars has also been nominated for the Golden Globes. So it may not have won for the Golden Globes, but at least it was nominated. So my question is, out of the movies that are nominated for Best Drama or Best Musical or Comedy this year for the Golden Globes, which movie do you think is most likely to win Best Picture of the Oscars? So just for this episode, I'm going to go through the best motion picture drama and musical or comedy nominees for the Golden Globes this year. So we'll start off with Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody. Ugh. I don't know why I can't say that word. If Beale Street Could Talk, which I've literally never heard of that movie before. A Star Is Born. Those are the drama movies that are nominated. And then musical or comedy is Crazy Rich Asians, The Favorite, Green Book, Mary Poppins Returns, which is a movie that my wife will make me go see eventually. And then Vice. So the movie that I think is most likely to win Best Picture out of those movies, like I said, for the past 5 years, basically any movie that has won Best Picture of the Oscars was also nominated in either one of these two categories for the Golden Globe. I think because Hollywood and the Oscars are what they are, even though I don't think that this looks like a good movie, I think the movie that's most likely to win is The Favorite, which is, I don't know if you're aware of what that movie is, but it looks boring as shit. Like, I have no desire whatsoever to see that movie, even though I do have a bit of a crush on Emma Stone. I don't think that movie looks good at all. And so I have literally no desire. But because the Oscars are kind of pretentious, my guess is it would be The Favorite. If I had to pick right now, which obviously I do because I proposed this question, I think it's most likely out of those movies, if this trend continues, it's The Favorite.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because my wife, that's the movie my wife's going to make me see. She wants to see that movie really bad. So I will eventually see The Favorite because of how bad she wants to see it. That being said, I'm kind of struggling with this. I don't think that The Favorite's a bad choice. I think that it could definitely get it. Out of the movies I've seen, I think it's a toss-up between Black Klansman and Vice. I think Vice is probably a little too one-sided politically, even though Hollywood is notoriously liberal. I think that it might be a little too one-sided for it to win Best Picture because of all of the people that vote for that. So I think Black Klansman is a good choice, but you kind of got me on The Favorite too. So for the sake of conversation, I'm going to choose Black Klansman, but I wouldn't be surprised if The Favorite gets it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about Black Klansman, but I mean, the same thing that you said about Vice, you could say about Black Klansman too.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of racists voting in the Academy.
That's true. Let's hope not.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so yeah, that's it for episode. I believe this is 221. Yep, I had the nominees pulled up. I didn't have my notes pulled up, so I had to pull those up real quick. So yeah, that's it for episode 221 of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. As always, I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use. We're on it. You can check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com. Comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerd You're Looking For. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. They're both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Email us at thenerdyourlookingfor@gmail.com. And finally, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt.
we are The Nerd You're Looking For. Take it easy, nerds.
Later, guys.